when it comes down also to new functionality, you mentioned about many partners that you are or you will be partnering with. It also comes down who are the partners that we choose to work with for a certain type of product. How do you prioritize that aspect?
I will tell you this, I'm not sure about Ethereum. I think Ethereum has a product market fit. There's a community of builders and people that love it. And, Solana, of course, growing, etc. So I don't think it's about killing these chains. It's more about we're certainly going to bring some people, some builders and users from those chains back to Bitcoin for sure. That's already happening, and it's going to happen at a much larger scale pretty soon. That's definitely going to happen.
Financial Fox is proud to partner with HIVE Digital Technology, a public listed company focused on building the next generation data center infrastructure using only renewable energy. HIVE was the first crypto miner to go public and the first one to have an AI strategy. With operations in Canada, Sweden, Iceland, and now Paraguay, HIVE is a leader in efficient Bitcoin mining with the best hash rate realization in the industry. Finally, and most importantly, HIVE cares about its shareholders. That's why its strategy is low dilution, low G&A, and focus on cash flow. If you don't know HIVE, check them out at hivedigitaltechnology.com.
Talking about onboarding masses to Bitcoin, joining me on the show today is Jan Smejkal, Chief Strategy Officer at Xverse, the wallet for Bitcoin. Jan is a key opinion leader in the Bitcoin space, especially when it comes to Ordinals, Runes, and all things related to Bitcoin innovation. He's focused on new Bitcoin use cases as a way to encourage mainstream adoption. Before we get into the interview, a couple of things. Firstly, if you're watching our interview but you're not yet part of our community, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow Financial Fox on social media. You will find the links in the description. The bigger our community grows, the biggest Financial Fox gets, and the more prominent guests I can invite to add maximum value to you, whether you are an investor, founder, or a crypto enthusiast. Secondly, please remember that the content on the show is for informational purposes only and not intended as financial advice. Any opinion shared by me or my guests are ours alone, and you should not act solely on the back of them. As always, do your own research, level up your skills, and be accountable for our decision. With that being said, let's go into my conversation with Jan. Hey, Jan, how are you?
Good, Steffi. I'm super excited to be here. How's it going?
Fantastic to have you on the show. So last time I saw you was in Nashville, right?
Yeah, you're everywhere also, every time I travel somewhere, I see you, it's good. It's good that I am not in this game alone, everybody always tells me, oh, Jan, you travel so much. You're always everywhere. And I'm always happy to see that people actually take their time and travel around the world as well,
Yeah, it's so important. I think nowadays, because, kind of like we are working on projects that are basically global. And then, you work with people all over the world. It's really nice actually to take the opportunity to travel and, especially for these big events like Nashville, and then you can kind of meet all the community. I think is really, really valuable. So tell me, how was Nashville?
Nashville was great, to be honest. I think obviously it was the biggest Bitcoin conference ever, right? And so I think it was great in terms of meeting all the people in the ecosystem, because I think everybody, every single builder, or most of them at least, they all went to Nashville. And so I think all the side events and just the overall experience was really amazing. I think it was really valuable, for me personally, and obviously for us as a company to go. Obviously, one thing that maybe wasn't that good is people had too high expectations, right? They were expecting, that after Trump speaks at the conference, and they were even some rumors that Elon is going to show up as well. People had these crazy expectations, and, obviously we saw the market price action afterwards that unfortunately we didn't even go to the all-time highs as everybody was predicting. And so that was maybe one thing that was kind of disappointing, but, it is what it is. And, sometimes, or usually it's like that. When something is so hyped, then it's very hard to kind of match those expectations. But, overall, I don't focus on those things. for us, we're a long-term builder in the space, and I really care about seeing the community grow, which was pretty apparent in Nashville. There's more and more people interested in Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin. And so that's what I care about. And so to me, the Nashville trip and the Nashville conference was just 10 out of 10.
Yeah, completely agree. Listen, how many Bitcoin conference have you been? I mean, the one organized by BTC Media.
I think like maybe 3 or 4, because they did Hong Kong, they did Amsterdam, they did Miami last year. Before Miami, I actually didn't go to any like other Bitcoin magazine organized conferences. So for me, it's kind of like a new thing. This was like the second year, obviously with Ordinals kind of going to these things. And I mean, as I said, I like to just see the ecosystem grow. That's what I focus on as a metric to kind of like see where we're headed even as an ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think, like you, I've been to probably 3 or 4 events organized by Bitcoin Media. And it's very interesting to see how even the people attending and presenting, having a presence at the conference and change. At the beginning was mainly Bitcoin miners and some others player, but I think now, for example, with Nashville, there was a big, art section. There was actually people, they are building DeFi on Bitcoin. So there was much more variety that is kind of getting, is developing on Bitcoin. And that was really nice to see.
Obviously in the past, as you mentioned, it was mostly about miners and just kind of Bitcoin Maxis. And now thanks to Ordinals and thanks to this like Bitcoin Season 2 and Bitcoin Renaissance, we see a lot more diversity. I think at Nashville, it was pretty clear that there was so many of these Bitcoin L2s and DeFi protocols and Bitcoin staking protocols. And, there's so many of these things that are kind of popping up. And a lot of these protocols are raising a lot of money from investors because there's obviously a lot of these institutions and investors that actually kind of want to unlock that Bitcoin liquidity, want to get that yield on their Bitcoin. And so, I think we're going to continue seeing more and more of that stuff. It's just like we see it as well as a wallet in the space where a lot of people reaching out to us on a daily basis, building some of these solutions and protocols. So I think we're going to continue to see this trend. We're going to see like which direction is going to be the strongest. Obviously, I still love Ordinals and Runes. Right now, obviously, it's a little bit less active in a sense, when you compare it, let's say, to March when we're in Denver, when we saw kind of the mania when it comes to pre-Runes and Ordinals. So right now the ecosystem is a little bit less active, but the OGs and the true believers are still here. And so we're going to see like how that is going to evolve. But, a lot of these things, being built are obviously, growing and, people are going to be trying and experimenting with different stuff.
Let me ask you an interesting question. So what's your journey in crypto? And then why you decided to focus on Bitcoin or embrace Bitcoin rather than perhaps getting involved with other ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I started in crypto full time in 2021. I have been playing around with some NFTs and some stuff before that, just kind of like buying some stuff and like learning from people. But I think I really got involved more late 2021. So I have been in crypto for maybe, let's say, 3 years, so this is kind of my first cycle in crypto. And I've been hearing about crypto for much longer, right? So, I have been doing different things in China, in Asia. I spent a decade here in this part of the world. And, I think like for the very first time when I really paid attention, when I first kind of heard about crypto as an ecosystem was really kind of the ICO era of 2017, right? And I really didn't like it, to be honest. Like I didn't come across a lot of great projects at the time, and I was kind of just like observing and from distance just hearing about all of these rug pulls and scams and people that are just trying to launch a coin quickly, make some money, make some exit and get away. That was kind of the stuff that I was exposed to just because maybe the people that I was hanging out with at that time were not really that deep in crypto. So everybody was kind of looking at crypto like, oh shit, this thing is not real thing. It's a scam, whatever. And so I really didn't get involved at that time because, I always care about building some fundamental value. I've been building different startups and different companies, either myself or working with other people, helping them build their companies for a very long time, for basically past decade. And I really like to focus on fundamental issue, fundamental problem, and solving that problem, building a product that people want to use, that people enjoy using, and obviously kind of like hopefully building it into a huge company. And again, so didn't get involved in crypto in 2017, but always been kind of like hearing about it and like, kind of observing from afar. And then, yeah, like when 2021, kind of the run with NFTs happened. And I think that's kind of the thing that really spoke to me. I was like, I want to learn more about this. Like, I want to just understand how this works. Like, I didn't buy everything at the time because like I felt like it's so fucking expensive when I saw like some of those things trading at like, tens of thousands of dollars. And so at the time I couldn't really get involved that much. I was just learning. I was like, hey, there's something here. And so I started to learn more about it. I started to attend some of these things. Like, I actually mentored a couple startups in that ecosystem and helped some of them raise money, and like just did kind of like a lot of work just to learn as much as I could. And, then one thing led to another, and I got introduction thanks to Trevor. I think Trevor was the person who introduced me to Ken from Xverse. Got introduction to Ken and really liked the product, really used the product. And I was like, hey, this is cool. And, maybe there is something we can do together. So we started talk, and one thing led to another. I decided to join the company, and then kind of like, the thesis was very, very clear, as I mentioned. Building on Bitcoin is not cool now, but if it becomes cool and if there is more stuff that happens in that ecosystem, you need a wallet. And that opportunity was just, in my eyes, it was just the best opportunity, out there in terms of like risk and reward. And so decided to like really, really go deep, and, the rest is history, right?
Yeah, definitely. And just in a few years, I mean, consider you just got in the space properly in 2021, you managed to become one of the leading voices in this kind of next generation of Bitcoin builders. I think is quite impressive. So tell, just for the people that are watching that might not be so familiar with Xverse. I mean, we have got, I think many of our viewers are, for instance, looking at crypto. They might be investors, but they are not really so native, so then they use a Bitcoin wallet. They might still use MetaMask, right? But give us like a minute's overview of what Xverse is.
Yeah, and I also use MetaMask because that's how we all started, right? That's how we all started in the space. And so, that's awesome. And I think there's nothing wrong about that. I think ultimately Xverse is kind of like MetaMask just for Bitcoin, right? So as I mentioned, like why I got so excited about building on Bitcoin, because, I think that opportunity is just so big in terms of, how large that ecosystem on Bitcoin can become, because that ecosystem was basically non-existent 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And now it's there and it's growing rapidly, but it's still very small comparatively to Ethereum and Solana and these other chains. And so, again, we wanted to kind of tag that market from this perspective. Like, we want to focus on Bitcoin ecosystem. So obviously supporting all the Bitcoin assets, obviously starting with Bitcoin, and then, now with Ordinals and Runes and even some of the L2, protocols and L2 tokens. And there's going to be more of them that we're going to support in the future. And so we are really kind of like MetaMask for Bitcoin. So if you want to do something in the Bitcoin ecosystem and you need a wallet that is 100% focused on it, that makes that user experience very simple and also goes kind of pretty deep in terms of coming up with some sort of advanced features that you cannot really get elsewhere. So that's kind of what we are. And ultimately, Xverse, obviously, it's a wallet company. We're a wallet company. So, you start a wallet, you get your seed phrase is a non-custodial wallet, self-custody, etc. But we want to become a place where basically we make it so easy for people to manage all of their Bitcoin assets, right? And when I say Bitcoin assets, obviously it's Bitcoin itself. It's stuff like you can connect your ledger, you can connect your Trezor, you can connect your hardware wallets, you can do this kind of self-custody, cold storage, etc. But at the same time, you can take that, you can connect to applications, you can buy ordinals, sell ordinals, you can trade runes, you can do all this stuff. And you can, manage your portfolio. You can see, like what's happening with your portfolio, and you can see like how you actually can leverage your portfolio. Let's say with platforms like Liquidium, you can connect to them, you can borrow land, and there's going to be many of these things coming to life. And obviously with the L2s and potentially with Opcat that is going to get activated, like this kind of soft fork upgrade of Bitcoin, then we're going to get a lot more stuff coming to Bitcoin. And so we really want to be that gateway that help you manage all of this stuff and make sense of all of this stuff, right? Because many times it's very technical and people kind of get confused. Okay, how does this work? How is this like BRC20 token and Rune token and this L2? Like, how does this work? How do I do that? So for us as a wallet, we want to abstract a lot of that complexity and make that user experience really great to make sure that we can onboard as many people to Bitcoin as possible.
So what is the key to success to make the best user experience when it comes down to crypto?
I mean, to be honest, that's like $1 billion question, right? It's something that if I actually had the answer for you today, then, we would probably be in a different spot, right? I think, with user experience and with a company like Xverse, it's always A/B testing, right? Like we can have certain idea, we can have certain vision, what we want to build. But ultimately what you have to do as a startup, you have to put it out there. You have to get people's opinion. You have to get people's feedback. And, you launch a feature and you think, oh yeah, this is the perfect way to do it. But after maybe 10,000 people use that feature, they will give you feedback and you're going to be like, oh, we didn't think about this. Like we need to improve this. We need to make this simpler. We need to explain this better. We need to add this warning because maybe there is this edge case that could happen if somebody does this. Right. And so we're always kind of collecting feedback because there's a lot of people that are using Xverse today since we have been on the market basically from day one and we have been on the market for past 3 years. I think the key to building the best product, not only in crypto, but in general, as a startup, as a tech company, you need to basically ship fast. And you need to be able to get the feedback from the customers quickly and obviously kind of adjust, to the specific situation, to the specific protocol, to the specific way people use that product. Obviously, you're probably never going to be able to satisfy everybody 100%, right? Because it's impossible to like make sure that one user maybe wants this and the other user wants that and the 15 other users would want a different button and want to have this and that. So it's like impossible to like satisfy everybody 100%. But what you're shooting for is you satisfy most of the users most of the time and you provide things that other people don't provide. And so it's really like a constant iteration process and brainstorming with the product team and testing things out.
And also, I guess that's great. But also, I guess when it comes down also to new functionality, you mentioned about many partners that you are or you will be partnering with. It also comes down who are the partners that we choose to work with for a certain type of product. How do you prioritize that aspect?
Oh my God, you're asking all the right questions, Steffi, this is like the hardest part of the job, right? Like, first of all, like, how do you come up with the best user experience? Like, again, it's a trial and error and, just doing things, shipping things and like getting feedback and shutting things down or like removing stuff if needed and stuff like that. And, with partners and prioritization, I think you can get a little bit sophisticated with some data points. Obviously you kind of look at the market and you talk to people, you can also talk to like influencers in the space or like investors in the space and people who are really involved. And you're trying to you're trying to understand, okay, which L2 is going to be the best L2, which L2 has kind of like the most potential in terms of tech, which L2 has the most potential in terms of traction. Like, are they actually onboarding developers right now? Is there a lot of people that want to build on that L2, etc.? So you can definitely get some data points in advance. You can kind of observe the ecosystem and decide. But to be very frank, I think many times it's about just taking educated guesses, right? You kind of, obviously we're OGs and we're pretty involved in the space and we talk to people like yourself on a daily basis. We go to these spaces, we listen to people. And so we kind of have some sort of, I would say, broad idea what people want and what we should be focusing on. But at the end of the day, you also have to have some sort of ability to just like take a risk, right? And, it's usually based on this educated guess. Okay, like we're going to spend resources on this thing right now. And if it works out, amazing. And if it doesn't work out, okay, we will have to pivot. in the next month or so. And so it's like in a constant conversation between, myself and the product team. And obviously the product team talks to the engineers and needs to kind of assign resources appropriately. And so if you make the wrong choice, which obviously happens in startups all the time, you basically end up wasting time and the engineering resources. And so, the prioritization and choosing the right things to work on is very important. But I don't think that there is a way to be always 100% correct about stuff. So you always have to kind of take a risk and say, okay, we're going to do runes. We're going to focus on runes. And we hope runes are going to work out. And we have some sort of indications from the market that runes are going to be the next big thing. So we're going to commit to it, right? And then after we kind of ship that first version, and obviously we kind of keep improving in the future, but then you kind of want to say, okay, so now we have shipped this, so maybe we can do another thing. So let's focus on the L2s, let's focus on this, let's focus on that. Or we want to kind of improve the overall user experience. So there is always so many things to do in a startup that you always have to prioritize and take some sort of risks and guesses a little bit.
Yeah, so let's dive deep into runes. Why are they going to be big? Because the first time that I kind of got to know runes was obviously about cases, start to put a bunch of information out on Twitter and call them the shitcoin on Bitcoin, right? But I think we've gone beyond that. So what's about runes that you think they've got a stronger case for, the future?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And, ultimately, there's, in my view, a couple of reasons why runes are successful, because they're already successful. Obviously, the market is not crazy hot, but, there is no tier one exchange listings, or there's not many of them at least. And we're still able to kind of keep up with, all the other protocols and in terms of organic numbers of holders and stuff, that stuff is just keeps on growing and growing and growing. Obviously the market price doesn't reflect it yet on many of the tokens, but again, I just think that that's just the market force, and I think at some point it's gonna flip. But ultimately runes are much more efficient as a protocol that allows people like us, especially the builders, to build around it in a better way. Comparatively to BRC20 tokens. I love BRC20 tokens. I'm not hating on BRC20 tokens, but I can give you some anecdotes. I get, even today, even though BRC20 tokens are used much less, and most of the liquidity comes from Binance, where you have listed Ordi and Sats and a couple of these tokens. So most of the liquidity comes from there. On-chain liquidity is much lower, and the activity on-chain is much lower than runes, when it comes to BRC20 tokens. However, I love them, but I still get people reaching out to me on a daily basis, and they're just confused about how it works. I want to transfer this token. I need to inscribe a transfer inscription, and then I need to take that transfer inscription. I need to list it. I need to send it. It's just very complicated thing. And obviously the degens understand it. The people who were early, they take that time to understand, and it's fine. But if you're onboarding new people to this thing, I think it's just going to be too complicated, and you can abstract it to some extent, but you cannot abstract it fully, because there is still that kind of, how that protocol works. And you kind of have to obviously go according to that, because otherwise it's not going to work. It's not going to be valid transactions, whatever. And so runes are much more simpler in that regard. So we can make that user experience actually a lot simpler as a builder in the space when it comes to, for instance, wallet transfers and stuff like that. Yes, the blocks on Bitcoin are still the same and they're still slow. You can say that runes are actually quicker because you don't have to have that extra inscription, that lets you transfer something. So yes, it's kind of faster, quicker, but yeah, people don't care about that, but it's still, because it's still pretty slow. But, technologically, I would say runes are definitely a step forward, when it comes to the meta protocols on Bitcoin. That's one. Second reason, which is more kind of branding wise in general for these tokens, it's on Bitcoin, right? So it's a shitcoin on Bitcoin, and people do shitcoins on other chains, and they're so excited for it for one reason or another. Maybe the UX is better, of course. Yeah, meme coins. Yeah, 100%. And so now we can do this stuff on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the asset. And so again, just reasonably, or just applying a simple reasoning here, Like people will want to do meme coins and shit coins on Bitcoin. People already do it today. And obviously we need to just bring more people in, or we need to kind of educate more people about that. But I think ultimately when Bitcoin is going through a crazy run, when Bitcoin is going through this massive adoption, because Bitcoin is always the most adopted crypto in any bull market, right? Because Bitcoin is like highlighted all over media. People buy it through Coinbase, through Binance. Like people get kind of exposure to crypto through Bitcoin first. That was actually my case back in the days when I first bought my crypto. It was Bitcoin, right? And only then you start learning about the other things. And so that's another reason why I think runes and specifically meme coins and shit coins on Bitcoin are going to work long term. It's just a matter of time. And then, third, which is kind of like the long-term view, is like, all these things that we discussed that could be a problem for user experience, they're going to get solved at some point. They're going to get solved by these L2s. They're going to get solved by OpCat. They're going to get solved by all these other upgrades that are going to happen in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so, all these things that are kind of I would say slowing the adoption down right now, they're going to get solved. And once that happens, then, it's just going to be a floods of people coming in and trying to play around with this stuff. So I actually think from a user standpoint, from like somebody maybe even quote unquote investment standpoint, obviously I'm not giving any financial advice here, but it's always better to be in ecosystems that are hard to understand, that are harder to use, because if it was super easy to use, then obviously, it's already at a different stage of the market and maybe the opportunity is not that large, And so, yeah, I'm just like extremely bullish on Ordinals, Runes, and everything that's happening on Bitcoin, that there is no scenario in my world that I see it that this is not going to work out. It's just, for me, it's a deal done already. It's just a matter of time.
As a DeFi, continue to progress on Bitcoin, do you think that this is going to kill Ethereum?
Oh my God, I don't think so. Ultimately, we're so, I would say, far behind right now, right? When it comes to still, like, when you compare the ecosystem on Bitcoin and DeFi on Bitcoin, and you compare it to DeFi on Ethereum and even the other chains, like we're still just only starting to scratch the surface on Bitcoin. Right? Just because we have only been around for basically 1.5 year. And also because stuff that we can do today is fairly limited, right? Like there's no question about that. So, I think that for us, just keep making progress and just focusing for the next couple years, just doing experiments and testing things out. And basically just showing or proving people that this stuff makes sense, that people actually want to use Bitcoin this way. We just have to build, that underlying infra so that people feel comfortable to use Bitcoin that way for DeFi or whatever you want to call it. I think that should be the first North Star, right? Like we should just focus on that first goal, like kind of looking ahead and saying, oh, we're going to kill Ethereum. We're going to kill this chain. Like, I will tell you this, like, I'm not sure about Ethereum. I think Ethereum has a product market fit. There's a lot of people, there's a community of builders and people that love it. And, Solana, of course, growing, etc. So I don't think it's about like killing these chains. It's more about like, we're certainly going to bring some people, some builders and users from those chains back to Bitcoin for sure. That's already happening, and it's going to happen at a much larger scale pretty soon. That's definitely going to happen. I would say we're going to kill some of the smaller chains, some of the chains that are maybe still looking for product market fit and they don't have it. People invested maybe billions of dollars, or there is billions of dollars locked, but those ecosystems don't have a thriving ecosystem of builders and they don't have a, clear product market fit. I think the fact that Bitcoin is Bitcoin and there is more and more stuff that you can do on that chain and with that chain, that means that, yes, we're going to kill some of these smaller chains in the immediate and midterm future. But I wouldn't go as far as saying we're going to kill Ethereum. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, I don't see 10 years from now. We don't know where it's going to take us. I think I'm kind of looking into the future and hoping that we're going to see more and more people coming in. We're going to see some of the upgrades like OpCat happening, potentially even other upgrades. And maybe in 6 or 12 months from now, when we actually see some of these things coming to life, then we should have this conversation again. And we should discuss, okay, like what's the next step or what's the next North Star that we should be targeting. But I wouldn't be predicting future like in a way, unless I want to make a meme out of it and say, yeah, we're going to kill Ethereum. But I think it wouldn't be realistic at this point.
Is interoperability a priority for you, or just you want to focus on the Bitcoin ecosystem?
Yeah, we 100% want to focus on Bitcoin ecosystem, right? But Bitcoin ecosystem can mean a lot of things, right? And we already see it with some of these L2s being EVM. We see it with Stacks kind of being a separate chain that is tied to Bitcoin and stuff like that. So, the fact that we're going to see stuff like Opcat. We're going to see stuff where you can do trustless, permissionless bridging, etc. That's actually going to unlock that stuff that you can do stuff between Bitcoin and Ethereum and Bitcoin and, Stacks and Bitcoin and Solana and Bitcoin and other chains. And so that still can mean Bitcoin ecosystem, right? The way we're going to interact with it, we are always going to focus on the Bitcoin side of things, but that doesn't mean that we cannot allow people to potentially bridge their assets elsewhere and do stuff elsewhere. So, again, right now we're focusing on just building the best wallet experience for Bitcoin, mostly L1, because that's where it is. And in the future, we're going to see how the Bitcoin ecosystem overall is going to continue to grow and where kind of our mind share or maybe our focus is going to go at that time.
So if we just focus for a bit on Ordinals, they've kind of been NFTs on Bitcoin, digital art. Where are Ordinals? Where do you see them expanding into? Does it go to like decentralized IP and all the cool stuff that Trevor is doing? Or, is there anything else that you're looking?
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, I hope that we're going to explore everything, right? Like ultimately, that's what we have to do if we want to succeed as an ecosystem in basically establishing ourselves as the go-to place to do art or as the go-to place to do, digital artifacts and stuff like that. I think we have to experiment. We have to try all of these things. And yes, some of the use cases are not going to be possible on L1. We're not going to be able to maybe do like high frequency trading and, we're not going to be able to do gaming on L1. That stuff could move to L2 or some of the other, layers that are going to be built on Bitcoin. But I hope that we're going to have all of these use cases and it's going to be tied to Bitcoin in one way or another, and I am personally a very big fan of, IP. I am a very big fan of just like art, digital artifacts and stuff like that. Obviously, PFPs and these kinds of degen communities are never going to go away. I think, that's just part of the crypto culture and I personally love it myself. Again, is it something that every single person in the world is going to care about? Of course not. There's only going to be, maybe a subset of people or small niche of people that are going to care about this and going to think that this is the future. But, again, it's one of the things, like you have to, we always talk about it, right? Like you want to grow Bitcoin's adoption. We need to offer different people different things to do with their Bitcoin, and so art and JPEGs and casino and gambling and meme coins, it's just like part of that. And, again, it's just scratching the surface, but, it's very important piece of that ecosystem overall.
Yeah, super. I just have got two other questions I want to ask you. One is about, the Bitcoin Maxi approach. So at the beginning, those people that were very resistant, they didn't like Ordinals, they didn't like anything. Where do you think we are right now, and what's the message that you would like to send to them?
I think there's still a lot of people that hate Ordinals and that hate anything that is going on in this Bitcoin season 2. I mean, there's always going to be people like that, right? And so I think it didn't change that much in a sense that, these people don't exist anymore. I think there's always going to be these people. I think what changed is, maybe some of them gave up complaining about it. Maybe some of them became a little bit more open-minded to it because they see, okay, it helps miners. It helps, other things in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So like, okay, I don't like it. I think it's stupid, but like, I guess I understand why it exists and like why it's good for Bitcoin. And, then yeah, there are definitely some Bitcoin Maxis that were even converted, I remember actually Trevor sharing on the Ordinal show where he was saying that he was in Nashville and there were people coming up to him and saying like, hey, Trevor, like, you know me as this guy, but I'm also this guy on Twitter. Like, and I've known you for years. Right. And so, that's kind of like I would say a proof that like some of them maybe were turned altogether or maybe they loved it from the beginning. They they just didn't talk about it because all of their friends hated it, right? So like I think ultimately there's always going to be people that will hate whatever JPEGs, will hate ordinals, will hate casino and fungible tokens. And again, I think that's fine. I think not everybody has to love it. I think obviously what we meme or what we kind of complain about or we make fun of is that people argue about stuff with actually not having really a strong argument against it. They just like have some sort of perception, or they're like, okay, you don't do it the way I like to do stuff, so I'm gonna hate on everything you do, even though it doesn't make sense, right? So that's kind of like the approach, or maybe the maxis that we don't like in a sense, but we kind of make fun of it. It's not that like we're trying to pick fights and like trying to hate on one another. I think that's not really the point here. But yeah, I think the message is like, again, not everybody has to like everything, right? Bitcoin is permissionless. We're all following the same rules. We're paying money for these transactions. And, some people want to put art on them. Some people just want to transfer Bitcoin from one wallet to another. And there's really nothing you can do about it, So why would you complain? Just go and build something instead, build something that people want to use. And if it pushes your specific values to those people and people actually enjoy those products, then that's the way you should approach things. And that's the way you're going to win eventually, instead of just complaining on Twitter.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is freedom, so you should be free to
exactly, and Bitcoin is freedom. Bitcoin is for everybody, as long as you pay fees, as long as you follow the rules. And nobody's trying to break Bitcoin here. Nobody's trying to advocate that we should change Bitcoin every day. Nobody's saying that. But, experimentation and, I would say, professional experimentation, meaning that you follow all the rules, you test everything properly on testnet, Signet, you stress test, you do things, you do experiments. Like, I think that's very important, for any ecosystem.
Yeah. So the final question, I want to ask you a bit about Asia, because you have been there for over a decade. And obviously, Asia was big in Bitcoin mining, that it kind of shut down everything. So the focus has been mainly on the US. So you talk about Bitcoin is mainly like US community, but actually you are also a founder of Bitcoin Asia. You have done this Ordinals Asia, right? So that big event that was early this year, where actually there is a lot of interest, especially in the Ordinal space coming from Asia. So give us a little bit more flavor. What's happening in Asia, and what's about the Asian culture that really like Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things, right? You're right. I think Asia, you cannot really say Asia because it's very diverse, right? So in China, yes, they banned mining, etc., but all the miners moved somewhere else. And so all of those major miners, they still have the Chinese roots and Asian roots. And so, they didn't go anywhere. Those businesses didn't go out of business. They just moved somewhere else and they just keep mining, and so those companies are still the same, probably even bigger than they used to be right now. Maybe they're mining in the US, maybe they're mining somewhere else. I don't know exactly, but, many of those companies are still part of the ecosystem. That hasn't changed. It's just obviously the regulation around it changed. That's one, to your point. Second, there is not really any maximalism in Asia. Like people don't have these crazy cult ideas around Bitcoin. They just obviously want to make money. They want to mine. They want to have as much Bitcoin as they can have. They like to gamble. So they gamble on these fungible tokens and these other protocols and these other tokens and these other blockchains. So people are very like open, trying new things, obviously, because the reason is like, okay, we want to try it because we think it's going to go somewhere. We want to make money. We want to be first. We want to gamble, as most of the people in the crypto ecosystem. But in Asia and China, they're not really, I would say, emotional that much. They're just very practical. They just focus on, okay, this is hot. Okay, let's go into it and let's see what we can build here. Obviously, again, you also have to be careful because there is a bunch of projects that, as everywhere else in the world, they just want to scam or, they just want to rug pull. They just don't really want to build anything. They're just kind of riding the hype. But again, that's the same story everywhere. That's not just here. But yeah, there's not really this idea of Bitcoin maximalism at all, or at least I have never met any Bitcoin maxi, pure Bitcoin maxi in Asia. Never ever, never ever had this kind of awkward conversation that can happen in the US and elsewhere. So that's that. And I think in general, like people are just much more open to new things, and as long as there is some sort of level of speculation to it and there's some sort of level of hype to it, like people just jump on stuff pretty quickly. And they're like, okay, this is going to be the next big thing. We need to do these BRC20 tokens. We need to do these bitmaps. We need to do this, now like everybody talks about fractal. from Unisat, this L2, or like we did Merlin, right? Like Merlin was extremely popular here for a while, and obviously they're still huge, but there was this huge hype cycle around Merlin, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. And that was mostly from Asia, because people are like, oh shit, like we can stake our ordinals, we can stake our BRC20, we can stake our bitmaps, and we can get an airdrop of like the next big, potentially the biggest Bitcoin L2. And so people really jump on things pretty quickly here, And so I think that's maybe slightly different compared to like US and other ecosystems where people kind of look maybe more for technology, more for like reasoning, like why this thing is going to work, like why is this the best thing ever, instead of just like, okay, let's try it. Like, let's see, let's play around with it and let's see what happens, And so that approach to things is very, very different.
Super interesting. Jan, thank you so much. That was such an interesting discussion. Thank you for making
No, thank you, Steffi. Thank you so much for having me. Of course, I always appreciate your support and, even the invitation to have me on your show. And, if there's anything I can do, if anybody wants to build something with Xverse, or if I can help connect with some other people in the ecosystem, please like reach out to me on Twitter, reach out to me, or meet me somewhere in the real life. We're probably going to see each other somewhere else again very soon. And, happy to always connect and happy to always help.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much.